So welcome everyone to the first reading of our budget for the next fiscal year for School District 58. And at our board meeting next week, we'll do the second and third reading, including any feedback we get from this evening. I wanted to start with a territorial acknowledgement of the Inkle-Clapman and Silk people, and also mention yesterday seeing our students marching for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. That really did my heart good in these trying times to see our students moving forward in that manner, because we know on that list it includes students from our district who never got a chance to grow up. So it was good seeing our students in the march. I wanted to start with some brief history again on the district. As most of you are aware from the two public consultations, for the past 10 years, we've been able to draw down on our reserves to cover costs in an underfunded system. And we're now at that point where we're having to make some reductions into our budget of about 4.7% or 1.5 million. So it's not a place the board likes to be in, but it is a place that we're in. We know in Surrey, I believe they're cutting over $18 million from their budget over the next week. And I believe Kamloops is still looking at 80 teacher positions. So we're not alone in this across the province. I can also let you know the board 2 weeks ago at our AGM with the BC Schools Trustees Association supported two motions. One was asking government to honor its education assistant commitment from the election, and the other was to fully fund any settlement patterns. As some of you are probably aware, all of our teacher and QP contracts, and indeed the greater public service, all come due June 30th. And we want to make sure those are funded as well as our excluded employees, because we understand there's a freeze on our excluded employees at the moment. So we're still supporting those efforts at a governance level to try and have more dollars directed into the public education system. You'll hear tonight a couple of areas I wanted to cover. We're believing that for our tenured teaching positions, we're going to make up the 5.62 teaching positions across the district through retirement and attrition. So that's a bit of good news for us tonight that we'll be able to do that. It still means less teaching positions, but we're going to be able to manage it without layoffs of our tenured staff. We also had two questions I wanted to touch on from our public consultations. One, we had parents ask us about closing a school to save dollars. And so I am providing a notice of motion tonight for the board to consider next week a school closure process. These take about a year minimum as a public consultation, but putting that out there now, we did hear from you as parents on how we could use that to save dollars. We know probably at least 3 of our schools are under capacity by at least 40%. So notice of motion on that. So the board will start that process, have the ability to debate it. And if they pass it, start that process for a year out, which can certainly help us anywhere from $500,000 to $800,000. Another concern we heard about was busing of students, rural students for Collettville. And as we looked at that, and the board will have a chance to debate that both tonight and tomorrow, one of the recommendations we've got now is that for those students over the walk limit to their neighborhood school, that we'll still bus them. So if you're out in Lower Nicola, if you're up in Upper Nicola, Douglas Lake, we've heard those concerns, and we believe that we can cover that. Instead of having 6 buses go to Collettville, we'll have the students getting onto a single bus, either at MSS or Central. That's still to be worked out for that final 1.7 kilometers. So we did hear those concerns, and we believe we can manage that for those students who are over the walk limit to their neighborhood school. If you still have questions after this meeting, please get them to the board by Friday so that we can get them in the board package that goes out on Friday. That will be very helpful to us for the public meeting that's coming up on Wednesday for second and third reading. We've also had some people ask us specific questions about how it's going to affect their particular school. That's still a bit early. Right now, we have preliminary numbers to schools, but just like every year, it's those final numbers that occur over the summer of late registrations or students who leave the district that drive some of those final changes in September. So I just wanted to get that out there as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our superintendent and secretary treasurer to walk us through the recommendations they're making to the board.
Okay, so in the board package, you saw my memo about the mitigation strategies that we did not bring forward or recommend. I think it's straightforward, but if there's any questions, I can answer them. And then I was also going to walk you through a summary of the feedback that we received. So I'll walk you through the feedback, and then if we have any questions at the end, you can feel free to ask them. So we've had a number of letters and emails with feedback about the preliminary budget. We've shared them with the entire board, whether they came to me or me and Gordon, so that everyone was able to read the full text. There's two areas of concern, and one of them is French immersion. So we had 13 parents who provided feedback. 10 have students at Collettville. One does not, and 3 parents provided multiple emails with their thoughts and suggestions. Biggest concern was no longer providing busing to Collettville, which, especially from rural parents, which Gordon has addressed, will be able to do it for the students who are rural, out more than 5 kilometers from their neighborhood school. Like Gordon said, we're still working through the details with that. And we did have parents ask about paying fees. We have gone over this as a board, and it was actually one of our mitigation strategies that we had that we didn't pursue. And the basic reason is the cost of busing is significantly higher than most of the public realizes. Typically, to buy a bus and do the route is about $350,000. So the fees would be significant. And even the boards that charge the fees, it doesn't cover the cost. So we've reached out to our neighboring boards. At most, it's covering about 1/3 of the cost. And if you have multiple children, it's very expensive as a family. And when you look at where we fall in the socioeconomic index, a lot of our families are already struggling. So to impose further fees, I think would be a burden and a hardship that I wouldn't recommend or feel like parents would be able to do it. And I think it would actually create more barriers to attendance in our schools. And attendance has been a provincial issue since COVID. The numbers have not really bounced back in terms of student attendance. So putting up additional barriers for students would not be something that we would recommend. I think the role that the board has taken in advocating for busing to be a core service, especially in rural, or a different funding formula, I think is a better way to go in terms of advocating. I had one parent ask about field trips. There's no impact to field trips or excursions. It's a separate source that the school funds. We had 2 parents that were concerned about their child not being able to graduate with a dual dogwood. So when they take their courses at MSS, if you finish the French immersion program, you're able to graduate with that dual dogwood. We're going to offer our classes in person. They will be combined classes just due to numbers. We won't know the combination until we know what our final enrollment is, that in what those courses are. And the other question I had was about would they be forced to do online courses? And it's actually in our mitigation strategies that we didn't recommend. There is an online Francophone school. If you're in grade 8 and 9, you can't do a part-time program. You would either have to enroll full-time there, or you would have to be a student at MSS. But also, just in terms of dollars and cents, it's more economical for us to offer the class in person, and the students also get that face-to-face. So I think that relieved some of those concerns. The other one is band. We received 13 responses. 12 of those individuals were outside of our district as well as outside of the province. It was a form letter. And we were kind of looped up into the proposed cuts to band in Surrey, Maple Ridge, and Burnaby. We're looking at simply grade 7 band in Merritt. It was a half-time position, and the reality is we have very few straight grade 7 classes anymore. This program was partly designed to provide prep for teachers. And there's also no choice for the kids in grade 7. And we've actually had more feedback from parents that they don't like that it's mandatory and that their children don't get choice for it. And then we had one parent that expressed concern about not offering band within our district. So these were the main 2 areas of feedback. We had previously met with our rights holders, our partners, and our budget working group and our admin, and we had feedback. That partly goes into why we didn't go with some of the mitigation strategies that are listed in the memo. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But I think it's relatively straightforward.
And if you remember, we started off in January thinking it was going to be 2.5 million. And because of the work that we...
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
We provided the trustees. Should look familiar. It's the ministry's budget and some of the mitigation strategies we're recommending. That can be found on page 12 of the package, or page 5 of the template itself, and that's schedule 2. So statement 2 and schedule 2 are the 2 big numbers, or the 2 big forms on that ministry template. That's been the majority of the conversation. So if trustees are looking at trying to reconcile some of those numbers, that's where all of those great details can be found. So
maybe Harold, if you could just go into those numbers, so anyone else who's watching who doesn't have that document in front of them from the public will just get a better understanding of that, since I don't think we're broadcasting this.
No, can you put the package up?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, I believe it was part of the overall package, but it sounds like it's going to come up on the screen, and I can maybe go over. And if Cassie can get us to statement number 2, which is page 10 of the overall package. Gordon, you raise a good point. I can walk through those the significant numbers, because that totals the bylaw that we're asking the board to consider doing first reading for. Of the $42 million. So that's an important number to kind of reference in tonight's conversation.
And just a reminder for our public, because one of the other questions that came up, we are required by law to pass a balanced budget. Unlike the federal and provincial government, we cannot pass a deficit budget. So just a reminder to everyone that that is a legal requirement for us as a board. And we're just waiting for the document to come up. There we go.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. If you can just kind of roll us down to page 10 of the overall package. I think it's 10 of 22.
Yeah.
Sorry for putting you on the spot here.
It's okay. You're coming up. Number 2.
Yeah, just keep on rolling just a little bit. Yeah, we're looking for statement 2, which is, I believe, on page 10 of the package. So there's the bylaw itself, and then a little bit lower than that. Right here, that's actually, if you move up. So this is the key document. I know it's a little bit tough to read, but trustees may recall that during our budget presentation, both in Merritt and Princeton, we talked about the 3 funds that make up the annual capital the annual bylaw, which is the operating fund. So we're looking at proposing an amount of $31,252,431 for operating. The special purpose fund is the sum of that 8.3 million and the 155,000. And then last but not least, our capital fund. So that's the amortization expense on our assets of 2.4 million. The sum of those four numbers add up to the annual bylaw that we're asking the board to consider passing tonight, which is the $42,228,817. So again, that's statement two. All the great details for Schedule 2 has for the operating fund. So that breaks out that 31,252,000 into salaries and benefits and all of the expense items that we've been talking about for the last 3 or 4 months. So I just thought I'd bring that to the trustees' attention if they're looking at for some of the specific numbers. Thanks, Cassie.
And I believe trustee Kent Laidlaw had a question too. So trustee Kent Laidlaw.
Hi, thank you, Chair. Yeah, sorry, I'm just doing this on my phone and the setup's a little different. I just had a question for the superintendent and secretary treasurer based on an email that we received from a parent yesterday. I've been reading through it, and one of the things that they mentioned was a possibility of provincial funding for French immersion and therefore possibly for the Collettville buses. I'm just wondering, what is the reality of that? Have we looked into that? Is that even feasible to use for busing, or is it special purpose funding in the sense that it wouldn't cover buses?
Harold, do you want to speak to that?
I could try. I hadn't heard that to date, but if it was specific funding that the government would provide for French immersion, then more than likely it would be a special purpose funding, maybe a one-time grant that we would be able to access. The timing it would be a little bit challenging. Obviously, a lot of districts are going through the same process we are right now. Some have already passed their budgets. So to be able to, implement that money, they would have to go through the amended budget process that we'll normally do, and the fall and the winter leading up to February there. So we'd have to take a look at the details to see exactly what we could use it for, but that would be a potential funding source that we would be able to utilize if government did provide it. So.
I can speak to my experience in other districts. Typically, the additional funding we get for French immersion is tied to instruction. Typically resources, staffing, those sorts of positions. It helps fund French language coordinator is typically what the dollars, they tend to be special purpose funds that you are limited in how you can spend them. In my personal experience, I've never seen it go towards transportation, but we could look into it further.
We'll ask the question.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. That's just what I was looking for. Thank you.
Other questions from trustees?
Yeah, Gordon, sorry, I can't find my hand up here on this screen. So
Trustee Rayner.
thank you. I just you mentioned something about the EAAs, and we've been obviously talking about that for some time. Have you or Courtney, because generally you get calls with the ministry, have we heard any timeline or a discussion on when that EA proposal or implementation might come into effect?
What we know from government to date, which is why we had the motion at our annual general meeting, to date, government has said it is not going to honor that campaign promise. And so we have gone back and said that we believe, and that was districts across the province, that should be honored. So we will have to check with SD58 to see if government does that or not. I think the other thing, in looking at the government's fiscal picture, I'm not hopeful that they will come up with those dollars, but we'll keep pursuing it through our trustees association at a political level, and I believe QP BC is also pursuing it through their avenues.
Gordon, do you mind if I add, because our assistant superintendent, she is the one that oversees French immersion. There is a French immersion growth grant, but it does not include busing. So she's been the one that has been working at the school level for this. We'll look and see if there is a grant. I'm not aware of it though, but we'll look into it and see if it exists.
Okay, if there's other questions from trustees. And if not seeing any, then I'll look at Kat. Kat, do you have any comments online?
No.
Not right now.
Okay, so we have no comments online. I'm not seeing any other questions from trustees. So if we can pull up the bylaw for first reading then.
It's coming.
Okay, so the bylaw is in front of you. I would need a mover and a seconder for first reading.
Moved by Rayner.
Seconded Jepson.
Moved by trustee Rayner, seconded by trustee Jepson. Is anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion is carried. That will mean that second and third reading will be at the board meeting next Wednesday. Is there any other business before us tonight?
Can I just make a comment?
Trustee Jepson.
I'd just like to say thanks to the members of the budget working group, which, if everyone wasn't aware, is made up of trustees, QP members, BCTF, principals, district staff, district leaders, all came together to do this difficult work. And I think that what they provided to us was in the best interest of all students. So I just wanted to shout out those people to do that hard work.
Thank you, trustee Jepson. If there's no other business before us, then I'll take a motion to adjourn for this evening.
So moved, Ward.
Moved by trustee Ward, seconded by,
Seconded by Kent Laidlaw.
I think that was trustee Kent Laidlaw. Anyone opposed? Carried. We are adjourned, folks. See you next week.
Thanks, everyone.